All right, gang. I finally did it. I went from no documented COVID infection, or even suspected COVID infection since the beginning of the pandemic. So from 2020 to full on COVID, full blown COVID. Can you say that? Is that not PC, like saying full blown AIDS or something? No, full blown COVID. And I'm just going to, anything I say that gets me canceled, I'm going to blame it on long COVID, even though I just got short COVID. So I thought I'd share the story with you because, we talked about COVID all through the pandemic, and I'd never had the personal experience of actually contracting the damn virus. I figured maybe I had an asymptomatic version or something, but having actually gotten it at a decent inoculum now, I can say, nope, I haven't had this. This is special and not special. So let's talk about it. And in the comments, I'd love it if you shared your story of getting the latest variant, this flirt thing, and let me know, how's it been? If you're someone who's never had documented COVID, weigh in on that. If you've had it multiple times, tell us your story. Humans love a good story, and I'm increasingly convinced that life is nothing but a story. So share yours in the comment because it's fun. So here's the story with my story. My daughter is up at a summer program at a big university, calls me up on an evening before a weekend and says, I feel terrible. And, she's staying in a single unit in a dorm. And she's like, I have these shaking chills and I just don't feel good. And I really want to come home. And of course, it's not encouraged to do that. Like, they want you to stay on site and all that. But so I had to pull the doctor card and say, I need to bring my daughter home because I'm worried she's ill and needs some medical testing. So I go pick her up. I make her she looks terrible. I pick her up on the Saturday. I bring her home and, she looks bad. I made her wear a mask in the car, but, she was coughing and she just looked awful. And I thought, influenza has been going around, interestingly, in the summer, and so has COVID. And she recently got back from a European tour with her orchestra and got sick then too. But at that time didn't test for anything. And everyone was sick on this tour. So that said, who knew what it was, right? But there was a suspicion. She comes home, we test her because we have a ton of tests from the pandemic. They're all expired, of course. And she tests positive instantly. And of course, she's been all over the house, coughing and touching everything and rubbing all over the cat because she hasn't seen the cat in a week and she was homesick and everybody else is petting the cat. So, my other younger daughter and my wife are in the house too. And so I was like, oh, okay. So she started getting better pretty fast just from being home and being able to sleep because her main symptoms were not being able to sleep. And by Monday, she'd been afebrile for well over 24 hours. We slapped a mask on her, followed CDC guidelines, and sent her back. And she's been doing great. Since then, she's just a little cough. That's it. Otherwise, it's been totally fine. Kind of brushed it off. Foreshadowing. So Monday night, I go to bed. And Monday day, it was weird. I was going to go to the gym, but I just felt like, I just don't feel like it. And there was a kind of a fatigue, like a vague fatigue. And I thought, that's strange. And then, with this whole meditation stuff and all of that, the whole awakening journey, a lot of times energy can be really weird. And so I kind of chalk it up to some of that. So I go to bed that night around 9 or 10 or something. I'm an old man. I go to bed early. I wake up really early. And it was absolutely bizarre because my head hit the pillow, but I did not sleep all night. But it wasn't like there were symptoms really. It was just a complete inability to go to sleep. And what was strange is my attention just kept scanning through the body because that's one of the practices I do. So it just felt like this body scan all night until around 3 a.m. Then I was like, you know what? I'm just not sleeping. I should get up. And when I got up, I was like, oh, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. It was weird. And then I started having a little bit of chills. And I was like, oh boy, well, guess who got the Rona finally? And in a sense, it was kind of like, yeah, it's about time. It's been 4 years plus, 4.5 years, and I haven't gotten it. And I talked all about it during pandemic and no personal experience of having contracted it. So Interestingly, that morning I was really like not feeling good at all. Like most of the symptoms were. This was really fascinating about it. Remember back in 2021, if you guys have been following it all, me back then, I did a video about after getting the second dose. So I've had a total of 3 doses of the COVID vaccine, the original version. So the first one back in January of 2021 as a healthcare provider, then the second one, however many weeks later, and then a third one in that winter because I was going to visit my parents and I wanted to have enough circulating antibodies that I wasn't going to spread something to them. That's all the vaccine I've ever gotten. I haven't gotten boosters after that. And I'm currently 51 years old, right? Back then I was a little younger, obviously. So, and I don't have any other diabetes or anything like that, obesity, risk factors. I do have 2 clotting predispositions, factor V Leiden and prothrombin 20210A, heterozygous, found out through 23andMe, but have never had a clot that I know of. That's it. So, and I'm in reasonable shape. I exercise, all that, good aerobic capacity, whatever. So back then I did a video, the second dose kicked my ass basically. And the symptoms that I had after that second vaccine dose were the exact same symptoms that I had this time in the beginning. So inability to sleep initially, like just what is that? This kind of exhaustion. And then the headache, like the really bad headache, the feeling like you've been hit by a truck, like muscle aches, the shaking chills and fevers, low grade in my case, like 100.4 or something. And this just really deep malaise, like you just can't do anything. You just want to lay in bed, but you can't sleep. So there's like weird activation. And at the time I made this comment, I said, this is what I bet it feels like to have COVID minus the cytotoxic effects, meaning the actual viral infective effects. So there you just have spike protein, and that's your immune response to the spike protein. So all those symptoms are our immune system trying to fight a threat. That's what that feels like. But this time I had those exact same symptoms, but you add the cytotoxic effect of the actual virus. So that means cough, which I did not have with the vaccine, congestion, which I didn't have with the vaccine, and a little bit of a sore throat, and this kind of itchy eyes and stuff. So the sinus stuff, eyes, sore throat, and cough with some phlegm. And so those are the cytotoxic effects of the actual viral infection and replication and so on. So it's an interesting experiment to try to tease out what's our immune response and what's the direct effect of the virus. And now I kind of know, right? So it was like an interesting observation. So that first night on Monday, just not being able to sleep, then feeling like you're hit with a train. That morning, I was having fevers and all that. I did a rapid test, and it was stone cold negative, like stone cold negative, like not even a trace of positivity on the thing. And I was clearly viremic at that point. But that said, so I thought, it's still COVID. It's just a false negative test. So this is an important piece, right? Because we'll sometimes do that one test. And by the way, people who think those tests are easy to do don't know what it's like to be a 75-year-old with poor eyesight and diabetes and not great tactile sense and so on. Those are actually, and bad vision. It's really hard to read the instructions. They're tiny. You need like a magnifying glass. And I'm 51, so I have presbyopia. I use readers right now to be able to read. And with these computer glasses, I couldn't read the instructions on the test. Luckily, I already knew how to do them. And I happen to be a doctor, which helps. But it's really kind of a drag, because if you screw it up, you're more likely to have a false negative test. That's the main thing. And so there was this false negative test. And I say false because you'll get to the punchline. I mean, I was convinced I had COVID because my daughter had it. So that day, waxes and wanes symptoms, just felt terrible, kind of laid in and out of bed. The question of how do I protect the other 2 in the house from that meant I sort of self-quarantined. So I stayed in another room. I actually came to the studio, and I wore a mask in the car when I dropped. I still have to take care of my kid, right? She's got to go to camp. My wife works all day. So I put on an N95, take the kid to school, to camp, and then come here. And so that's kind of what I did, hand washing, that sort of thing. And then at night I slept in a separate bedroom, yada, 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 yada. So that night, it was the same sort of thing, like just this brutal inability to sleep. And this was a piece of it. So people will say, well, you can take Advil, you can take Tylenol for symptoms and fever and headache and so on. And all of that's true. But my friend Paul Offit, who we've done several shows during COVID, has sort of argued this point that if you don't have to treat a fever, it's beneficial probably for the immune response, whether you're getting vaccinated and you want that immune response and you're getting a fever from the vaccine, or even actually being infected. It's beneficial if you can avoid treating that fever as long as you can, within reason, right? So, and within certain parameters, like if your fever is like 105 or something, well, you probably should be, talking to your healthcare provider anyways to see, is everything okay, right? But obviously there's levels of discomfort that are really unpleasant, like not sleeping, that sort of thing. So I waited a good, 24 hours. And then by bedtime, I was like, this is a bit much, because the headache, all of that, the body aches. So I took a gram of Tylenol, and that helped take some of the edge off. So I might've been in and out of sleep. But again, it was weird, this kind of body scanning from all these years of meditation. And that brings me to another point. So then we enter the second full day of the thing. That was yesterday. And Angela DeLulo is having this online meditation retreat. And there's like 500 people, and you do it via Zoom. So there's meditation, there's talks, or so on. So I was like, well, I'm not going to miss the retreat just because I'm dying of COVID. And at this point, the cough really started kicking in, and a lot of phlegm, a lot of mucus. And the strangest thing that people have talked about a lot, and I've done a show about, I go, okay, I don't want to, because I'm not exercising. I don't want to lose muscle and stuff because of the catabolic breakdown state. So I want to make sure my protein intake's good. So I take, whey supplements and things like that. But I was like, I'll just make like a couple scrambled eggs with a piece of cheddar cheese melted in it and salt. And usually I find that delicious, right? So I make it. This is yesterday morning. And I start eating it, and I'm like, this needs more salt. I put more salt on it. I don't taste the salt. In fact, I don't taste any of it. And that's the first time I realized my sense of taste was gone. Now, what's strange is I could still smell certain things, and I could taste certain things like sweet and very powerful kind of chocolatey flavors. Like I had a little piece of chocolate, and I was like, oh, I can taste that, but I can't taste salt and savory stuff. So I had a piece of pizza from the night before when, it tasted really good, just the night prior, and I still had COVID. And then in the morning, it tasted like nothing. It tasted like just a piece of cardboard. So fascinating. And since then, that's slightly improved, maybe slightly, but that was pretty remarkable. And there was a weird feeling on the tongue too. Now, at this point, I was like, okay, so let me test again. So I got another test out. I did it. And sorry, that was terrible coughing form. I coughed right into my hand. Don't worry, I wash my hands. I'm a terrible role model. This time I took the test. And again, these tests they can be tricky if you don't know what you're doing. You have to open it, squeeze in the solution into the tube, take the swab out 5 times over however many seconds, put it in, swirl it for 30 seconds, squeeze the tip of the thing as you're pulling it out. Always squeeze the tip. Screw the top back on, drop 3 drops into the detector. So I did all that while like having a little bit of, I'm feeling like you're hit by a truck. And instantly it's positive. I'm watching the column rise, and the test strip turns bright red, and then it hits the control, and the control is like barely positive. So that blew it out the box. I finally had a positive COVID test after years, and I've tested a fair bit of, not unreasonably, because I think that's silly, but and I've never had symptoms like this in those 4.5 years since COVID started. So it looks like I have my first real COVID infection, and it's legit. Now, with this flirt variant, people have said, a lot of people who've had Novid are getting it this time around. There's something about this particular Omicron daughter or son, depends. I don't know what the pronouns are for COVID. It hasn't told us yet. And so people have said, they've gotten it, or people who've had it multiple times have said, this one is actually kind of rotten. And some have said, oh, it's nothing. It's like a seasonal allergy. So that brings up this point. Every single human reacts differently to this particular pathogen, and all pathogens, because our immune systems are different, our conditioning is different. It's just like in meditation, we're really the sum result of all this conditioning, and it's just vibrating in this now. And it's the same with our immune system. So my response is very different than someone else's. My daughter's, she got better really fast. For all I know, my other daughter was infected, when she was in Europe, had a mild case because she was a little sick in Europe, and now is not getting it. And my wife actually had a booster over the fall through work at Stanford. And it's unclear whether that had any effect, but she hasn't gotten sick yet. And she was exposed to my daughter as well, as almost as much as I was. But again, everybody's immune system's different. And the inoculum you get, the amount of virus you breathe in, and so on and so forth. So all that said, the interesting point so far, so now today is full-on day 3. I didn't sleep great last night, but I slept better than I had the other 2 nights. My sense of taste is still kind of There was quite a bit of cough and phlegm, which was a little new, like this kind of wet cough was a little new this morning. The fevers seem to have resolved. The feeling of being hit by a truck is less. The headache is much, much better, and I haven't taken any Tylenol since. So it looks like things are on the mend. Now, one of the questions my wife brought up was, well, why don't you take Paxlovid since you're 51? Technically, if you're over 50, you're considered a little higher risk, over 65 for sure. And I didn't have a lot of comorbidities except for the clotting disorder thing, the clotting genetic predisposition, and who knows how that shows up clinically. And I thought, well, the data isn't great on people who have been vaccinated in terms of, preventing hospitalization in someone like me without a lot of comorbidities, right? And someone very elderly, well, that's another subject. But for me, it didn't seem to make sense. So I did not self-prescribe or ask my physician for Paxlovid. And as far as I can tell right now, I'm happy with that decision because it just seems to be getting better. Now, again, it could get worse. You could have that kind of old school COVID response. Anything can happen. So that's kind of the short COVID. So we talked about the Tylenol issue. We talked about the false negative COVID testing, why you need to probably sequentially test every 24 hours, or you can even do it more often if you want, if you have the test. Talked about Paxlovid. So what did I do for this? Plenty of fluids, rest, and Tylenol rarely. That's it. It really feels like, well, I'll tell you, there's a unique component of symptoms that I forgot to mention. This had a symptom that I haven't had with viral infection before, which is this sense of lightheadedness. And that's not even quite right in terms of the description. It's not really lightheadedness. It's like a indescribable sense of almost like pre-vertigo when you stand up, and not like so much orthostasis where your blood pressure drops when you stand up. And I check my blood pressure and all that, it's fine. This weird undefinable symptom of just something not right. I know it's not very helpful the way I describe it, but I know people who've had this know what I'm pointing at. And so that was an interesting, unique symptom of this. That and the sleep disturbance, which was quite isolated to begin with, felt very unique to my experience with COVID. Now, others have had this with influenza and so on. I haven't had influenza in years, and I do get flu shots every year, but I have not gotten COVID shots every year, right? So should you get a COVID shot every year? Well, it depends on whether you're high risk, and you should talk to your doctor. And of course, there are guidelines, but of course, I won't get into all of that right now. Your mileage may vary. Obviously, there are risks to having something like diabetes, being older, and we can see that COVID can reinfect you, right? People have had multiple infections and sometimes get quite sick with recurrent infections. So now what about long COVID? I don't know. I don't know anything about how that happens, how it works. And I'll tell you, if I start having symptoms of long COVID, brain fog, exhaustion, all those things, I will be the first to let you know from my experience, because that's all I can speak of right now is what I'm experiencing myself. Now, here's another little twist. So I'm doing the meditation retreat, right? And yesterday in particular was the first day of the retreat. And I'm thinking, how am I going to manage this feeling as shitty as I do, like sitting in a chair for all that time, not like coughing and having headache and muscle aches and all that and sweating. And here's what's fascinating is once you, and I found this to be true other times I've been just mildly ill with stuff while I'm meditating. There's something about meditation and dropping attention non-judgmentally into the experience field, meaning the body, meaning anything that's arising, fully accepting what arises without any resistance or judgment. And if resistance and judgment arises, let that be too. I felt great during the meditations. Like just, meaning I couldn't say that I was sick. All I would say is this, it's just this, it's just this. And then when I'd get up, when the round was over and I'd get up after the 40-minute meditation at a time or the talk or whatever, I'd get up and I'd be like, oh, I feel like I've been hit by a truck. Like, because immediately I'm back into the conventional labeling of I'm sick, I'm here in my house, feeling like crap and I've got COVID. So much of this is what the Buddha talked about with the 2-arrow scenario. You can get shot with an arrow. That's COVID infection, right? And that has its own sequelae. It has a certain sensation, it feels pain, has physical consequences, all those. But then there's a second arrow that we shoot at ourselves, which is, I wish it wasn't like this. What if I get long COVID? Should I have gotten this or that? Should I take Paxlovid? Why me? What if my wife gets sick, right? That's the second arrow that causes so much more suffering than the isolated first could ever cause. So that is my COVID story. Excuse me. If I stroke out in front of you, well, that'll be a good story, but I hope not. And I'll keep you posted. Thanks for listening to this story. I mean, it's basically story time. All of this is a story, gang. Trust me. Actually, don't trust me. Please don't trust me. Look for yourself in your experience. Can you believe a single thought to be objectively true? All right. On that note, smash that like button, hit share, leave your story in the comments because it really helps the algorithm. Because our channel is like shit right now because I never make videos and I don't talk about COVID or anything anyone cares about. I just talk about awakening stuff and people are like, oh. So help a brother out. That's all I'm saying. Not that I really care, but I love you and we are out. Peace. Shit.